CaFÉ webinar. Today is the third and final in our three-part series previewing the new version of the CaFÉ site, which is coming soon. The key items that we will cover include upcoming changes to the CaFÉ site, specifically the upcoming changes to the call editor page. Before I log in here, I will give you all a brief overview of the launch of the new CaFÉ site for administrators for anyone who hasn't attended one of our previous two webinars. We've sent a few email announcements about this so far and plan to send a couple more as the launch date approaches. But as you know, there will be soon a new interface for the CaFÉ site. The juror and artist side won't change, and the changes are mostly design related, but there are a few updates and new features we think will improve your experience using CaFÉ. So in our latest webinars, I showed you the event management, artist citation, and jury administration pages. If you missed those, you can view the recordings on our YouTube channel. Today, I'll review what the new call editor page looks like and talk about the new features we've included there. So as you can see, the login page looks the same for now. It will actually be updated when the release happens, so this will look different too. Once I log in here, the first thing you'll see is this new interface complete with the new colors. The menu is now on the left-hand side as opposed to the top, and it can be closed by clicking these three lines here at the top. You can click that to open and close the menu. The menu itself is the same, though. It has the same tabs. And other than that, nothing much has changed. The logout button is at the top right here. And that's all you really need to know about the overall design. Some of you have already seen this, so it's nothing new. But today we'll go over the call editor page. And just so you know, when the release does come, that all of the call data and the previous call will be transferred over to the new site. And all of the calls that are currently running, if you have them open, still accepting applications, those won't be affected. They'll still be open and accepting applications during this transition. All right, so let's dive into the call editor. So I'm going to start by choosing the call in the events management page. And you'll see the green call editor button here. So once I'm in the call editor, you'll see we have the three tabs at the top right that are the same: event information, application editor, and product editor. And then at the top of each page, no matter which one you're in, which tab, you have these new sections we have up here: the call overview section and the status section. The call overview section gives you the event or call name, the unique URL, that's the one that you can use to promote your call. You have the jury type listed, the call type listed, the entry fees that you've set up for your call, that will be listed here, and then the number of applications that you've received so far. In the status section here, we have the call status. So when you first add your call to CaFÉ, it'll be listed as not published. This means you're still editing the call and it has not gone live on the call listing page. So here is where I want to talk about one of the bigger changes that this new version of CaFÉ will come with. In this call editor, there's no longer the front end status that you would usually use to publish your call. Instead, you will submit a publish request to the CaFÉ team so that we can quickly review your call and publish it for you. We decided to go this way because that will ensure that all calls are set up properly, that you have the correct jury type. And then we also wanted to make sure that no calls were left disabled when they should have been active. This gives us a chance to make sure that all calls to be published are indeed published. When you request your call to be published, we'll do that brief overview and then set your front end status to active for you, at which point the call status will be listed as published. If we are still awaiting payment on the call, you will see that the call status will then become pending. So instead of setting the dates back to the year before, we have a new system so that if you still need to pay for the call, it'll just be listed as pending. And then once we receive payment, we'll go in there and update it so that the call status is published. If you're looking at a previous call, since you'll still have access to all of your old calls and it's under the archived list, you'll see that the call status might say archived in that case. Those are the different statuses that you have there. Also in this section, we have the deadline date and the date that the call was originally entered in the system. as well as the last updated date. This will tell you which administrator for your account, or maybe one of the CaFÉ staff made a change. It'll list the date and the time that someone last made an update to your call. Moving on, we'll go over the information in the event information tab. First of all, you'll see that we have this kind of new layout. It's kind of like a card layout with different sections. So you can go through here and edit your call section by section. First, at the top, we have organization details. This is where you enter your logo, contact information, which is where the artist can reach you, and the overall call type and eligibility. The city, the state, the organization name, call type, eligibility, all of those are all searchable keywords and filters on the call listings page that the artists can see. Below this section is the call listing details. Here you have the call name, the short description and long description. These two are pretty much the same as before. The short description is that truncated summary of your call that is displayed on the call search page. And then it entices anyone to click and view more information and apply. The long description then appears on your unique call detail page and is where you can expand upon the event or the project. When I scroll down, though, you'll see we have a couple of new items. In addition to the long description, we have the application requirements section, we have the eligibility section, and then the rules and terms to apply section. So these are all broken out into separate areas. The application requirements section and the eligibility section, those will display again on your call details page, and it'll display just below the long description that you have up here. So before, where you used to have one long description that you had to put all of your information in, this just gives you a chance to remind yourself to fill out these specific requirements and then the eligibility, and they will display all together, but they're broken out on this side a little bit. For the rules and terms to apply, this replaces what used to be called the legal agreement. This will display not directly on the call details page, but as you recall, there's a button where artists can click to view legal agreement. When they click that, they'll see the information in this text box. Also, when the artist clicks apply, they're first taken to this legal agreement, these rules and terms to apply, and then they have to agree to that before they apply to your call. I can go ahead and I'm just going to click the preview call button and I'll show you what this looks like. This is what the call detail looks like. Nothing much of this is going to change. You'll see that you have the long description, which is the same as before. It's going to be listed here. And then you'll see that when we get down to submission requirements, this is what was put into that applications requirements section. Same thing with presentation guidelines that I have. This is all demo text. When you get in there, it'll all be blank for you to put in your own info. But then this is what is listed, this info here from the eligibility section. Then when I click view legal agreement, you'll see that that's the text that I entered into the rules and terms to apply section. So that's what it looks like on the front end. All right. And then a couple other new things for any of our public art folks here, or just anyone who wants to use it. We still have this site plan option where you can upload an image or a PDF file of a public art site, floor plan, or anything related to the project. And then below that, we have a brand new field here, specifically for folks who have a budget. So if you have a project budget that the artist needs to know about, you can put that into this information here. So I can just, click. That's a low budget, but I'll put that there and I'll click save. And when I preview the call again, you'll see that the budget is listed here at the top. So this is a way that you can indicate your project budget right there in the call details. All right, so scrolling back to the top, we'll go over these other sections. Here we have the important date section. First at the top is the accept applications date. This is the same as before. It's the date that your call will be published and begin accepting applications. Next is the rolling deadline option. So if you have a rolling deadline, this will be in the on position, but most folks don't. They have an application deadline, which is the next field here. So this deadline will be set to the date that your call will close, specifically 7:59 p.m. Mountain Time. This deadline is needed until the date actually passes, at which point, if you need to reopen it, you just have to contact us and we can change the deadline for you. You'll notice that you can't change it when this is grayed out, but that happens after the deadline passes. And then finally on here, we have the jury dates in this section where you can indicate when you expect your jury to take place. The default we have is to the day's date, but you can update it to the dates that you expect your jury to begin. This just gives artists a good idea of when you're expecting to review the applications and get back to them. It doesn't affect the jury side, but it just notifies artists when you're planning on conducting your jury. Next here, we have the additional settings area. This has some various settings and features that will be used in various ways if you choose to use them. First, the exhibition and activity date setting. If I toggle this on and off, you'll see if I toggle it on, I get to choose the dates of my event. So this is supposed to be the actual dates of your exhibition, festival, and it lets the artist knows when the event takes place. If you don't have any sort of hard start and end dates, maybe it's a public art project, you can leave this setting off. Next, we have the confirm invite and purchase due date setting. You can turn this on if you're collecting a participation fee or handling fee after your artists are selected and invited. This is what used to be called the confirmation deadline. If you do choose to use it, there's a couple other settings. Feel free to email us and we can help you get it set up properly. But you'll essentially put this on and then choose the date, which occurs after the deadline and after the jury, by which the artist must return to CaFÉ, accept or reject the invitation, and then pay that additional fee if you have them. So it's not always used, but that's where that setting is going to live now. Next, we have the invitational private listings option. This is the same as before. If you have it active, if you have it on, you will then create this passcode. And that means that your call is listed privately on CaFÉ and only folks with the password will be able to access the call. So if you want your call listed publicly and want to have anyone be able to find your call, be sure this is toggled to the off position. And then finally, we have the prevent artists from archiving setting. This is that backend setting that ensures artwork artists submit to your call cannot be modified or archived until you're done considering them. So be sure this is toggled on while your call is open. When your jury process ends and you set your jury status to complete, this will update automatically to off, so you don't really have to worry about it. But if your call is finished and an artist is wondering why they aren't able to archive their entry yet, this is likely because this setting is still on. And then the last section we have on the event information page is the jury type. This will simply tell you which jury type your call is set up as. It will either be set up as scoring by art, meaning each submitted entry is separated into individual entries, or as scoring by application, which was previously called scoring by artist. Scoring by application means the images artist submits are grouped together and scored as a whole. If you have scoring by application listed here in this section, this is also where you'll have an additional option to choose how many applications you're allowing per applicant. So if you recall on the current version, it's called max applications allowed. This is where that will be. So you can increase that number of times that artists can submit. But that's only optional for scoring by application calls. This jury type can't be changed after you've already received applications. So when you first get in here, please just check this area to make sure that it's the correct jury type. And if you need to make any changes before your call goes live, you can reach out to us and we can switch it for you. Before we move on, another thing you'll notice for each of these sections is that each one of them has its own save button. So you have a save section button you'll see at the bottom of every of these sections. If you click the Save Section button, this will save the info for that particular area. So you can basically just save along the way. There's also a Save Call button at the top. There's one at the bottom of the page too. This will save changes across the board on this page, so you can update it all at once and click Save Call, and it will save all the changes. I recommend saving by each section as you're first entering information, but if you need to make adjustments and you make adjustments in multiple sections at once, go ahead and click that Save Call button to save all those changes. And then like I've showed you before, there's the Preview Call button at the top and the bottom of the page that allows you to view that same call detail page and what it looks like to the artists. Next, we're going to go over the Application Editor tab. So that's the next tab on the call editor. You'll see that these top sections, like I said, will always be there, so you can always get that information at a glance. For the Application Editor tab, the first section we have is the work sample requirements. This is where it will be listed how many images, videos, and audio files your call is accepting from each artist. Just like it is now, these requirements cannot be edited since only CaFÉ staff can update them. We'll enter your requirements as you enter them on the call request form. If you need to make any changes, just reach out and we'll help you make those changes to this area here. You can, though, change the number of work samples that display per row by changing this drop-down menu and clicking the Save Section button. This is just that setting that says on the application itself, let's say an artist submits 9 work samples. If you set this to 3 work samples per row, it will show 3 work samples, then another 3 in another row, and another 3 in another row. If you were to set this to 9, it would be all in one row in a horizontal line. So it's not a very important setting, but if you wanted to update that just to display it differently on the application, you can change that setting there. Then the next section we have, just like before, is an artist statement option. So this is essentially that pre-built application question that allows you to collect artist statements from your applicants. Just as before, if you want to use this, you'll go ahead and change this to on to activate it. Once you change it to on, you'll get some of these extra options. You can set a character length, maximum, or you can enter additional instructions. You don't have to provide additional instructions. The application will already say something like, please upload your artist statement, but you can describe a little bit more like we have here. Maybe that you want to learn more about their technique or maybe more about their experience, anything like that. So to save any of the changes and to save the section itself, just click Save Section. And that will add the artist statement to the application. Below that, we have the submission categories. If you are using categories to organize your entries, you can activate it by toggling it on. Once it's set to on, you'll see these spaces appear where you can enter 2 or more categories. I say 2 because there's no point in having just one category since that's just the default for all calls is its own category. But if you have multiple categories, you'll just enter any new ones here into this blank line and click Add New to add it to the list. If you need to edit the names of any of these, you can click the pencil icon and then delete any information or edit it. Click Save to save. If you need to delete any categories, you can just click this trash icon. And if you aren't using categories, make sure that this is toggled off so that there are no issues down the road with the categories being active without any categories created. So if you're not using it, leave it off. But if you are, just turn it on and you can create those categories. All right. And then lastly, on the application editor, we have the custom form questions. Here's where we made some nice new changes that I think will make your experience of building your applications even better. You'll see I have some example questions built, so you can see what the list looks like, similar to how it was before. You have the question type listed here and these little icons to kind of tell you what the kind of question that that specific question is. You have the order that it will appear in the application. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. You have the question title. This is just that internal label, so you know what the question that this line is referring to. And then if applicable, the options will be listed here. So this refers to the number of answer options for a particular question. These are only applicable to those checkboxes or radio buttons or maybe a drop-down list where you have multiple answer options that the artist can select from. So for example, in this, I have 5 answer options for this checkbox question. You also have just this note of whether or not the question's required. So you can see at a glance if the artist was required to answer that question. And then the actions column that allows you to edit, delete, and reorder the application questions. So I'm not going to go too much into the process about how to build each question type. We'll have another webinar later on to show the entire call setup process, including how to build the application. So we'll go in more into depth on the new site there. But for now, I'll just kind of quickly show you what it looks like when you build a new question. I'm going to start by clicking Build New Question. Previously, if you remember, you have to enter in some basic information and choose your question type ahead of time. Now, all you have to do is click Build New Question. Then the question editor module appears, and then you're prompted to first select the type of the question you want. So you have all these different options. These are the same options as before. I'm going to go ahead and just choose a checkbox question for today. Once you choose the type, the rest of the options appear according to the type selected. So if you have, a text box, you'll get some different options here than you would for a checkbox. So you'll next fill out this question. I'm just going to say, for sake of example, are you an artist? Even though the question's probably pretty obvious. You can put in your internal title, but this is not the actual question. I can make it required. Here in the custom questions section, I'm going to type in the actual question. Below that, you have the options. So this is where you add your answer options. I'm going to go ahead and click add option, and I'm going to type out the different answer options. In this case, it's going to be yes or no. I guess in this case, I should have chosen radio button as my selection because I want to make sure they only select one option at a time. So I'm going to switch this to radio button. One great thing about this new site is that you can switch your question type as you're going. You can edit it later and not have to delete the question in the wrong type, then re-upload it with the new type. You can just go ahead and switch it. Once I've had my answer options built out here, I'm pretty much ready to go. If I wanted to, I can include this additional help information. Just as before, if you include information here, it will display as a little help bubble on the application so that if an artist clicks it, they can view this information that you've entered here. If you don't want to use it, you can just leave that off. Then I'm going to click Create Question, and you'll see it gets added to the bottom of the list. Once I have all the questions built, it's easier to reorder it now, since all I have to do is go over here and on this little arrow, I can just click it and then drag it. So if I want this at the top, I can click it to the top, and I can do any sort of reordering here that I want. To save changes to this order, I'll then click Update Question Order, and you'll see that these numbers get updated so that it's in the correct listing. And that's how you know that those orders are saved. So now it's nice and easy to be able to reorder it and get the application looking the way you want it. And just as before, we have this preview call button. So if I click it, you'll see that it takes us to the artist side. And this is what the application will look like to the artist. So you'll see I have our new question we built out here below the artist statement. And you can just review this, make sure it looks the way you want it, make sure you have the correct question type for each question, and go back and make any changes that you want. That's basically how to build out the questions. Like I said, I'll go more in depth into the entire process in a future webinar, but that is the changes that are made to the application editor tab. The next and final tab of the call editor is the product editor. This is where you set up your entry fees. It's pretty much the same as it was before, since not much has really changed, but I will go over some additional things. And I'm not going to walk through the process of creating the entry fees or any other fee setup. Like I said, we'll talk about it in a future webinar, but I'll just kind of go over briefly the main changes to this page. So first, you have the product section. This lists all the products that are listed for your call. You should have at least one entry fee. Even if you don't have an entry fee, artists will have to quote unquote check out, and it'll just be $0, but they have to do that in order to submit their application. So it should just say $0 entry fee listed here. You can set up a second entry fee. Maybe you have a member price and a non-member price. That's an honor system based thing. So artists won't necessarily they can choose whether or not they pay the correct price. So you can always set up a coupon code as well for a member. Then you have the media fee, and under the fee type, you also have your other options such as other, which is that additional participation or handling fee after the jury, or the admin fee, which allows you to set up products to sell, such as catalogs or memberships maybe. So this is where you can choose that. Other than that, everything's the same. You have your cost, your item description, the fee type, the payment options, and the quantities that are sold and available. So this will tell you how many you've sold of that product. Oop, I'm getting timed out because I haven't saved in a while. I'll just click OK. Then you can select how many are available. So if you're going to cap the number of submissions, you can set this to like 200, for example. If not, if you want it to be unlimited, just leave that as is. And if you need to make any changes to these products, click the Save button to save these changes. And then if you need to delete a payment type, you can click the trash icon. You can see that I can't select these trash icons because I've already sold these products and therefore cannot delete them. Then you can click if you want preview fees. This will show you the entry fee setup that you have here next to the image requirements and work sample requirements. This is particularly helpful if you have a media fee and you want to check to make sure that the correct media fee will apply to the correct number that is your minimum, since each media fee is applied to each work sample above the minimum. And that's just a little preview. So below the products is the mailing address. You'll see that we've moved this from the information tab and into the product editor. So this is only needed if you are accepting check payments for your entry fees, in which case you'd want to make sure that your payment type here is selected to either all or just check if you're just doing checks. But if you are accepting checks, make sure you put your mailing address here so the artist knows where to mail their check. And then if you have any changes, be sure to just click Save Mailing Address to save those changes. Then finally, we have this new feature here, which is being able to view the coupons on the product editor itself. Previously, it was on a separate page. It still is, but you can see which coupons you have for this call. This will show you the name of the coupon that you created, the code itself, the amount, whether it's a percentage or dollars that is being discounted, the expiration date that you set up, and then which products the discount is for. So if you need to make any changes or want to create a coupon, you can either click Create Coupon or select any of these pencil icons, and that will take you to the new coupon manager. So this is the same. It'll list all of the ones we are just looking at in that list, so you can make any of the changes you need to, or you can go to the bottom to this blank entry that you have at the bottom and then enter a new coupon code if you want to create a new one. Just make sure that you select the products that you're discounting, that your expiration date is set to the date that's either your call deadline or maybe a little bit past that if you think you might extend your deadline, because once it expires, the coupon won't be available anymore. And you have the status to be able to enable or disable the coupon itself. Then when you're done doing any changes to your coupons or when you're done creating them, you can click the button at the bottom to go back to the product editor. And you can make sure that it is listed correctly. And that's pretty much it about the product editor. Like I said, it's a lot similar, just some cosmetic changes and the ability to see the coupons. That's all that's really changed there. This concludes our webinar of the call editor page. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to join our next webinar next month.